And I said what I saw. I just explained what I had seen and a conclusion that I and others drew from it. And there was constant stories in the newspapers about Monica Lewinsky, the scandals and all this sort of thing.
Do të thonë për ne që jetonim këtu, krejt koncentrimi ishte në çka po ndodhte në Kosovë. Po në çat kohë kanë qenë të ndodh viktima nga luftat shumë më të mëdha se ajo e Reçakut. Për çata zoni Walker, kisha fillu me ty në çet moment, pse mendon që imagjinatën e botës dhe të intervenimit e mur Reçaku e jo diçka tjetër?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I think Reçak, as you said, or as I said, was a intense but fairly small massacre. There were other ones much bigger in size and in horror than what happened in the village of Reçak in 1998. The context was a combination of things. First, there was the effect of what had happened in Bosnia somewhat earlier, in which the international community felt guilty that it had stood by when there were very, very violent outbreaks of violence in Srebrenica, in many parts of Bosnia-Herzegovina. There was also, in my opinion, some very special parts of the context in which Reçak happened that I mention in the book. And it's kind of hard to explain, but let me try very quickly. The KBM came in here in October, and here it was just 2.5 months later. There were a lot of stories of previous massacres here. The Yashadi family was obviously well known here, but not around the world. One of the reasons for that was that I don't know if the reporters, if the journalists got to the Yashadi site and reported right away what had happened. But I was able to get out to Reçak within a mere 8-10 hours of when the killing had taken place. So there was the immediacy of my and the KBM's arrival at the site, and I said what I saw. I just explained what I had seen and a conclusion that I and others drew from it. And it went around the world in terms of the news that an international mission head had said this was a massacre or a crime against humanity. And the world had to react, and it did, with front page stories, etc. Now, normally that would have died over time. That would have evaporated as other massacres took place here and elsewhere in the world. But there were a couple of things that happened that were happening at that time. And I mention them in the book, and maybe some of them have nothing to do with what happened, but the leaders of the contact group, the leaders of the large nations that were involved and worried about what was happening in Kosovo, each one of the leaders, persons, had reasons to try and divert attention from something that they were involved in. The one I know best, because I was following the news in Washington, was of course Bill Clinton, the president, was being being hounded by our Congress. They were going to try and impeach him, and there was constant stories in the newspapers about Monica Lewinsky, the scandals, and all this sort of thing. So Bill Clinton, I admire him as a president, but at that moment he was very underwater with his personal problems. In London, Tony Blair, another principal at the time, he was having serious problems with the Parliament. Every day he was being called up for at the parliamentary sessions and criticized for one or another policy. In Germany, Chancellor Schroeder was also, he had just come into office. There was a lot of arguments in Germany about whether he was going to take Germany in a more militaristic way? Were they going to be more involved in NATO and that sort of thing? So he had his problems. All of the leaders on that very day were involved in issues that they wanted to divert attention from. And lo and behold, the news comes out about a massacre in Reçakut, and with the memories of Bosnia-Herzegovina, with the memories of places where the United Nations and the international community had not reacted to what was obviously a serious matter and let people be killed without recourse, it all came together. And boom. Then President Milosevic and his cohorts in Belgrade, in their attempt to try to explain what had happened in Reçakut as a military battle, the KLA was engaged, it was two armies fighting each other, etc. That went from that to just almost announcing that anything had happened, and claiming that I and others had reclothed the bodies and moved the evidence around, etc.